Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Spyderco Knives Sage 5 Lightweight. First off though, in the name of full disclosure, I gotta let you know that this guy was sent to me by Spyderco. I talked to him, I said, hey, want to check out the Sage 5? They said, sure, absolutely. I sent him my full disclosure, visible on my website. Told him I'm talking about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. It might be a gem, might be junk. They still sent it along. We do have to assume this is the best quality controlled one of these guys ever. And I'm doing my best to assume, or to not let this affect the nature and substance of my review. But nevertheless, there we go. Next thing, let's do a size comparison here. And I'm actually going to do a little bit more in the way of size comparison than usual, just because there were a lot of comparable knives that I think merit that. But anyways, we'll start off here with the Spyderco Delica. So we can see here that size-wise, we're actually very similar. In terms of overall blade length, as well as sharpened blade length, we are very, very similar to the Delica. In terms of handle size, that is, we can see here that they are actually quite similar as well in the pocket. They are very, very similar knives in a lot of ways. So there's your Delica. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. And so you can see, again, sharpened blade length. Actually, the Rat 2's got the slightest of edges, so to speak. Edge? Okay. Anyways, there's that guy. And then here it is against the Spyderco PM2 or Paramilitary 2. And so you can see here, this guy is markedly larger than the Sage 5. A couple of other quick comparisons that may be worth doing just because they are, well, clear comparisons. This is the Sage 5 lightweight. This is the Spyderco Para 3 lightweight, which is a very interesting piece. Here is the Native 5 lightweight, which is got some gunk on it, sorry about that, and Native 5 lightweight, and so you can see again, we're in similar size territory, although each one with its own ergonomic charms, and then finally against the Spyderco Chaparral. So there we go. That's a bunch of size comparison, but now you've got a pretty good sense as to where this guy lands within their lineup. Then finally, I want to say the disassembly for this guy was actually a while back. I did a disassembly and first impressions video, and I'll rename that to, how to disassemble and maintain the Sage 5 when this guy comes out. So anyways, there's that. Let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of your Spyderco Sage 5 right here. So first off, on the good side, the ergonomics on this are very, very good. It's got a nice finger choil. It's got a good handle overall. And it is absolutely 100% grippy. The texturing on this guy is great. You can see there's a little bit of bidirectionality to it. It's going to make it very difficult for your hand to slide off in either direction, coupled with the fact that you've got a full finger choil with jimping, as well as this little area with the jimping under here. This guy is absolutely wedged in your hand. This is not going anywhere. This is a Vaseline factory-ready knife. It is staying right where you put it in your hand. That's a great thing. So, coupled with the ergonomics, this is just 100% locked into the hand there. Ergonomically speaking, there is a little bit of a flaw off of this wire clip sticking up there, but that's a common issue with the wire clip anyways. And that's going to be hand-dependent anyways. But nevertheless, ergonomically, this is good to go. Next thing, blade on this guy. This is an S30V blade, as you can see right there, CPM S30V. Absolutely a great steel. No complaints with S30V particularly. It is also a relatively thin blade. If we compare this guy to the Spyderco Delica on one side, you can see it is thicker than the Delica in terms of blade stock. But if we compare it to, for instance, the Para 3 lightweight here, there we go. We can see that it is thinner than the Para 3. So that's actually something that's, keep in mind. It's a good thing. But it's also a relatively small blade. It comes in under the 3-inch line, which is going to be making it legal in a lot more places. So yeah, there's that. And then in terms of edge thickness, it's relatively thin behind the edge, but frankly, so is the Para 3 lightweight. So I'd say the blade here is absolutely good to go. Next thing, it is a relatively lightweight knife. Like I said, we can go ahead and measure this guy in. We're coming in under 3 inches, pretty uncontroversial. And then the weight on this guy is coming in at 2.85 ounces, which is absolutely a beautiful thing. Let's see here, 80.9 grams. There you go. Enjoy rest of the world. But that's less than an ounce an inch. So it is, in fact, a lightweight knife by most definitions. And so that's good. Next thing, this is using the compression lock, and the compression lock is actually very well represented here because of this excellent action that it's got on it, which means that you can open and close this knife without your finger ever being in the blade hole, or in the path of the blade. That's a great thing, and there is no nubbin sticking up into the compression lock area there, which I know is something that bothers some folks with knives like the Shaman, etc. So there's that. It is using a wire clip, which, although it is a slight ergonomic hotspot, offers a very deep carry here, and it is also a reversible clip. clip, making this knife a very ambidextrously friendly option, because most people are still able to do the compression lock with their left hand, so that's good. Then finally, on the good side, the price here is pretty reasonable. We're coming in at $120, which is cheaper than the Sage 5, which is now up to $150, but it's in a very reasonable place. It's not a particularly expensive knife within Spyderco's lineup, and it finds itself sort of in the center of a lot of these lightweight options. So to me, at least, that's what's good here, is that it's $120, which is a solid price point. It's got a wire clip. Compression lock is a very nice lock. It's relatively light. It is got good texturing and a very nice blade. The great side, to me, the action on this guy is 100% what is great. When you release the compression lock, this guy rotates completely freely. This is everything you would want from a compression lock knife, yet there is zero blade play here. The use of a pivot bushing in this guy is actually a substantial but small upgrade. Is it something that's going to absolutely change your life? No, not necessarily, but it is something that will change the action of the knife, and you end up with something that is just this damn good. I love this action very, very much. Couple that with a very nice detent. This has one of the nicer detents that I've gotten out of Taichung in a while, particularly for flicking. I'm a big, big fan of that. And so to me, at least, what's great about this knife, 100%, is going to be that action. On the bad side, to start with, it feels a little bit more cheap than the Chaparral, for instance. I had the original Sage 5 on the channel a while back, and, not everybody's a fan of the carbon fiber they use there, but I think there are going to be a lot of people who are not going to be a fan of this either. Like, for instance, one difference that you notice relative to the Chaparral, which is given a similar plastic, but in a lot of ways, this feels a little bit better done. One of the main things that I think is driving that perception is the fact that you can still see the injection molding lines on this guy, which just makes it feel a little cheaper. You could absolutely sand that down, probably. It's probably not a great idea because it's fiberglass, so, be careful if you do that at all. But nevertheless, and couple that with the black, this ends up feeling a lot more like a budget sort of option than I think it otherwise would. So I don't know. It just doesn't feel as classy as the Sage 5 original, particularly, but also for some reason it doesn't feel as nice as the Chaparral in FRN as well, and that may be purely perception, or it could be the injection molding, or it could be something else entirely. But either way, it doesn't have that strong feeling of just like, whoa, that's high end. Next thing, that's a nitpick though. Next thing, clip on this guy, like I mentioned, bit of a hot spot, not the end of the world, but it's definitely a thing. Next thing, I am still not necessarily a big fan of the leaf style blade. I mean, they're okay, and I definitely, the Chaparral's got a leaf-style blade as well. I carry them both, but you end up with a fair amount of height when the knife is closed, relative to something like, for instance, a more classical, where, given you've got a big old hump there for the opening hole, but still, I don't necessarily know that the leaf-style shape is my favorite thing. Whatever, not a big deal. I'm nitpicking a little bit here. Next thing, the blade-to-handle ratio on this is pretty bad. I don't generally, talk that much about that, because in many ways, blade-to-handle ratio can actually be a downside. If you've got a lot of blade and a very small handle, it's actually unwieldy. And so I don't feel like it's out of line here, but if you're looking for compactness, if we compare this to the Chaparral, which again is one of the knives that I think is a very easy comparison here, you can see that the overall sharpened blade length is very similar. You get maybe a quarter of an inch. Yeah, about a quarter of an inch more blade out of the Sage here, but the amount of handle you get is substantially less. So that's one of the downsides to the Sage line, is that they're not very space efficient in the pocket there. And then finally, on the bad side, and this is wholly subjective, but this doesn't really feel lightweight to me. When I first got the Para 3 lightweight out of the box, I was kind of blown away, because it was just like, whoa. That's really light. That's crazy. This surprised me. It was so light. And for some people, it's like, oh my God, that's too light. But for me, when I was expecting a similar experience with the Sage lightweight here. But really, it isn't. It is lighter than the original Sage 5, but not by all that much. And this is a lightweight knife, but it's not super lightweight. In many ways, this feels like a misnomer. It feels like, this is not the Chaparral lightweight. It's the Chaparral FRN. This is the Sage 5 FRN. I don't know why they went with the lightweight name, because that kind of set up an expectation that I think left me feeling a little bit disappointed. Like, I thought this was going to be a super light knife, and instead it's just sort of it's a knife. And so, that to me at least is on the bad side, is that it's not super lightweight. The blade to handle ratio isn't super efficient. I still don't love the leaf blade shape necessarily. The clip's a hot spot, and it does feel a little bit cheaper looking than the Chaparral overall. So there's that. Nothing ugly here, so we'll jump into the final conclusion. This is kind of a weird knife, honestly. Not necessarily because it's bad in any way, shape, or form. In fact, no, it's great. But it was weird to review. It's a great knife. It has a good blade, solid ergos, a great handle, great action, and frankly, it's a new version of a knife that was already a gem. And so by transitive properties, this is a gem, and it's also cheaper, and yeah, there's a lot to love about it. It's not perfection, because it feels maybe a little cheapy. It's got the clip is a hot spot, leaf blades. It's a lot of handle for relatively little knife, and lightweight doesn't really feel like the choice. Like I said, in many ways, this feels like the FRN Sage 5. Yeah, it's lighter, but that's not the main difference here. The main difference for me is, do you like the FRN style texture? Do you need this additional texturing more, or do you prefer the carbon fiber originally? And the other big difference is that pivot bushing, that is. That makes a major difference with the action there, and so even if you do prefer the carbon fiber, this might actually be a compelling choice for that alone. But honestly, the biggest question with this knife isn't whether it's a good knife. No, it's a good knife. In fact, it's not even whether it's a gem. Yeah, it's a gem. In fact, it's a solid knife that would be a great tool for damn near everybody. I could hand this to pretty much anybody who needs a pocket knife, and they'd probably love it. They would probably find it to be a really nice option, and it's great. And action-wise, since this is an improvement over the original, as long as you don't mind the plastic, you know what? It's easily a gem. It's a great, great knife. The weird thing to me about this knife, and the reason that I kind of struggle a little bit with it, is trying to figure out exactly where it belongs in Spyderco's lineup. Because Spyderco actually has a bunch of knives that are in this guy's territory. You've got the Shabazz that I've already been talking about here, which is a smaller version, but with a slightly nicer steel, although XHP and S30V aren't amazing, but still, there's that. You've got the Native 5 lightweight, which is also actually is a relatively lightweight knife, which also has very nice ergonomics. There's a lot more diversity in blade steel available there. You've got the Para 3. Well, the Para 3 generally. This is just the Para 3 regular version. Happens to be one of the Maximate ones. You've got the Delica, which is always going to be an option here, although the Sage has got it outclassed in terms of steel and fit and finish these days. And then you've got the Para 3 lightweight. And so you've got on the table here, fundamentally, a whole bunch of very similar knives out of Spyderco. A lot of these have similar takes on life. They've got similar approaches. There's a lot to love here, and ultimately, I'm not necessarily sure who I'm recommending the Sage 5 to. The Para 3 lightweight is lighter than this guy. And it is a little, actually, I want to make sure of that, but it feels lighter subjectively to me, so let's see if it's actually lighter. Am I crazy? Yes, 2.43 ounces. Good. Yeah, this feels a little bit lighter. And so this guy is lighter. It's also more ergonomic to me. I like the Sage lineup a lot, but the Para 3 lightweight is just better in my hand than the Sage here. That's, of course, personal, but that's something that I feel quite strongly. And honestly, although the stock steel might not be quite as good as the S30V, the sprint runs that are inevitably coming for the Para 3 are probably going to have steels that are just as good, and hopefully we're going to be seeing some, full production models with some upgraded steels in the Para 3 lightweight in the future. So that one's a really strong competitor. The Shabazz is slicier, 100%. It's got a thinner blade, very, very thin edge, really, really nice. It's also more carryable, being really, really super thin. This guy is really thin relative to the Sage, and it's also about the same blade length, and it's got a lower price, so that makes it pretty compelling. The original Para 3 is a very nice knife for maybe, durability, for harder use, those kinds of things. Not that we're hard using any of it, but still, that's definitely an option, and it's only $10 more. And the original Sage 5 is a little nicer looking. The Delica is cheaper than any of these guys. Honestly, at the end of the day, the only thing that really stands out with the Sage 5 is this action. And that action, although it's great, isn't necessarily unique to the Sage 5. You can get that in other compression lock style knives. You can get that in the Para 3 lightweight. And so I end up feeling like, although I like a lot of what they've done here, the Sage lineup is great, and this is a great instantiation of it. And I love seeing the pivot bushing upgrade and things like that. I just don't know necessarily where who I would send to this particular knife. I just don't get it. And so it's in this really weird place where this knife is great. This knife is a gem. That's not really a controversial issue. It's an absolutely great knife, a solid everyday carry choice. And frankly, if any element of what I have shown you today appeals to you, then do it. You're going to freaking love it. It's a great knife. There is nothing absolutely wrong with it. But it ends up sitting in this field of really excellent options with, the Para 3 lightweight and the Chaparral to either side, both of whom going like, do you really need the Sage 5? I don't know. Do you think it? No, I think we're good enough. Yeah, I agree. Oh my God, I've got a problem. So now we'll put the talking knives aside and I'll let you know. So this is just a really, really great knife. But at the end of the day, I'm not 100% sure that that this guy is going to be better. Talking knives? Really, Nick? Oh, man, I need to stop or start. I don't know which. But it ends up feeling a little bit less impressive and amazing, even though it is a very, very excellent piece. And so, ultimately, if you want it, you want it. Otherwise, there are a lot of great options already out there for you. And there's my sage advice. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you. And have yourself an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now. Why does this have a higher voice? Anyways, bye now.